Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryang Karawawahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishawahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Verse 1 to 3 has talked about divine qualities, and we have talked about these for two reasons. The first one is these qualities that we have spoken of are the ones that inhere in the wise person. The wise person, if you ask them, what have you undergone to become this individual? What have you gone through? What have you believed? What have you practiced? How have you perceived the world that have gotten you to this perfected yogic state? Call it the perfected yogi, the perfected Jivan Muktaha. And if they were to reply to you, they would say, I have gone through chapter 16, verse 1 to 3. And I've taught, and I've thought, and I've contemplated and meditated upon those qualities, those attributes for a long time. And I didn't really start to take them all in at once, but rather chose one that was pertinent to my personality. So what personality would, though that quality that we have gone through, which one would you choose if you could? So the first reason is these qualities are the ones that inhere in the wise person's thinking. The second reason is so that the mind is open to wisdom. Last session, I asked, what is a wise person? Another answer to that is a wise person is one whose mind is clear to think at any moment. In fact, if you think about it, what is wisdom? What does it mean to be wise? The answer is to be wise is to have your mind available to this moment, is to have your mind available in such a way that you are perceptive and sensitive to realities that are operating all around you right now, whom you as an individual are also not apart from. And to be perceptive of that reality requires a mind that is not obstructed by its own impediments from the past. So again, twofold, these qualities inhere in the Jivan Muktaha, and second, your mind is always ever available, not only to your environment, but to any environment or even for the environment of others. And therefore you become highly perceptive of other people's feelings, of the environment around you, of your family, and you know exactly then how to respond appropriately. In fact, half the job done is just having that availability there so that Ishwara's capital voice can speak through that instrument, which it was originally assigned for. And to not use it according to what it was originally assigned for is to dump one's own stuff, one's own voice, one's own, as we said, last week, pratibhasika, personal reality, and therefore I do what? Cover up the vyavaharika reality. So again, this is highly crucial to understand. Ishwara is always speaking through your mind. God is always speaking on your mind. That is why your mind was originally given. I can only hear that original voice of guidance, that voice which is always correct and true and feels right and doubtless, and you act upon it willingly if I choose to put my own stuff away and make that mind available. Wisdom does not come from memory. Wisdom comes from your ever availability in this present moment, listening to that voice carefully. Now you say, how do I do that? I've been trying it for such a long time. The answer is always going to be the same. Take one of these qualities, which if Ishwara were to be a being, what qualities would Ishwara exhibit? For example, tapaha, tapas, right? Learning to be with that uncomfortable pain so that next time these small annoyances come, you're okay with it. Tejaha, the radiance of the wise person. What does this mean? The wise person is one whose intentions are proper, aligned to the realities that are operating right now. Therefore, they have a pleasing personality. We all know individuals like this. They just have a pleasing, friendly, non-threatening personality about them. Even if they don't say much, you still pick that up from them. The question is why? What went on to sculpt this person in such a way that I feel not feared, non-threatened? The answer is tapas, intention. What is my intention towards you? When I talk to you, do I have an agenda? Or am I speaking to give? What can I give you? What can I offer in this moment? Therefore, the person has to change from being a taker from the world into this Manushya shift. This is called the second birth of an individual while being alive, and that is to become a giver. What can I give in this moment? What is it in me that is spilling so much that I can never get enough of, that I have to share, otherwise my own heart is in pain? The person becomes the giver. How do you become a giver? Once again, by aligning yourself with these qualities of Daiva Sampat. Another quality we talked about is adrohaha. What is adrohaha? Absence of ill will at thought level. There's a beautiful story, in fact, of the elephant. 5 blind men were assigned, said, go over to the elephant. And then 5 blind men all started to investigate different parts. Some man was touching the big stomach and said, the whole elephant, the whole reality is flat and rough. Another blind man was touching the whole elephant in the form of a tail and said, it is narrow and pointy. Another man was touching the whole elephant in the form of a tusk. It said, it is hard and it is smooth. And so what were the 5 men doing? No matter what philosophy they carried, how much training they got, they all made the same error. And what is that? They were looking at the entire reality under the characteristics of one single individual part. Therefore, when the man who was touching the stomach, something behind him smacked him, that is the tail, then he had no choice but to have ill thoughts towards the entire elephant, thinking the elephant must be bad. And yet the man forgot what is the entire function of the elephant. He could not know that. Why? Because he did not have the right knowledge. So what is Vedanta? Giving you the knowledge of the whole so you can put every single individual part in the right place. And this is what an attribute of a Jivan Muktaha is. One that is educated. Where individual parts begin, where do they end? What is the function? What is their not function? Everything is put in the right place. Therefore, there is no chance for drohaha, ill will. So adrohaha is having that sense of non-ill will towards reality, towards people. Why? Because I understand that they are so much more than the just individual part that I happen to be in contact or perceiving right now. Now, Mina brought a wonderful little point last week, and she said, I may not know their entire life story. It doesn't matter. You can still recognize that there is so much more to them than I am perceiving right now. Because that is true, I choose to put my opinions aside and include so much more of this wisdom onto this person. This person is a product of so much more. They're the tail, they're the stomach, they're the tusk, they're everything. Even if I don't know them as the tail, don't know them as the tusk, don't know them as the stomach, I can still assume they must be so much more. Why? Because they are Chapter 11, Vishwarupa Vibhaga Yogaha, one glory of Ishvara, just like you. One glory of the order, which is perfectly coordinated and brought them to this place and sculpted their persona to be exactly what it is, just like your own persona is sculpted right now, which consists of so many variables since time immemorial has began. And you right now are a product of those causes coming together, being this person. Whether you know who this person is or isn't, it doesn't matter, but the big picture is still true. And that big picture, the wise man keeps their attention upon, even if you don't have the details of that big picture. So, 2 purposes of chapter 16. First, verse 1 to 3, bring forth these attributes of the wise person that bring you back in touch with the reality called Vyavaharika. And number 2, we have to go further. Verse 4 to 6 is going to introduce us to Asura Sampat, and Shankaracharya is going to say his commentaries Why will we now learn about Asura Sampat? So that we do not fall in the whims of their pull, of their temptations. In other words, we can only practice that which we, having exposed our minds to, then we can go forward. So let's expose our minds to those errors that we are tempted to make, disguised as Daiva Sampat, and yet they are those attributes that cover up the mind from the voice of God fully shining through. So let's begin. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattvasam Shuddhihi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Danam Damascha Yajñascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyama Krodhaha Tyagah Shantirapaishunam Daya Bhuteshwaloluptvam Mardavam Hrira Chapalam Tejaha Kshama Drati Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata.
Sri Bhagavan said, Arjuna, freedom from fear, purity of mind, steadiness in contemplation, charity, judicious restraint of sense organs, performing rituals, recitation of one's own branch of the Veda, religious discipline, austerity, alignment of thought, word, and deed, absence of hurting, truthfulness, resolution of anger, renunciation, resolution of the mind, absence of calumny, compassion for living beings, absence of ardent longing, softness, modesty, absence of physical agitation, brilliance, composure, fortitude, cleanliness, no thought of hurting, and no exaggerated self-opinion. All these are there for the one who is born to the wealth of Devas.
Thank you so much, Meena. Dambho darpo bhimanascha krodhaha parushyameva ajnanam cha bhijatasya partha sampadamasurim daivi sampadvimokshaya nibandhaya surimata mashu chak sampadam daivim abhijatosi pandava dvau bhutas sargau lokesmin daiva asura evacha daivo vistarashav proktaha Asuram Partha me Shurnu.
The one who is born to the wealth of an Asura has hypocrisy with reference to Dharma, pride, a tendency to demand respect, anger, harshness, and indeed a lack of discrimination. Spiritual wealth is considered to be for freedom, the wealth of an Asura, for bondage. Pandava, Arjuna, do not grieve. You are born to spiritual wealth. In this world, there are two types of created beings, the divine and the adharmic. The divine have been extensively spoken of. Listen to me, Arjuna, about the characteristics belong to the Asuras.
Asuri means that which belongs to an Asura. All our literature is replete with the altercations between the Devas and the Asuras, who, as you can see now, represent our internal conflicts. Everybody enjoys the qualities of a Deva to an extent. Absence of hurting, compassion, love, and so on are all very natural, at least towards oneself under certain circumstances. And the qualities of an Asura are also there. These two are always at loggerheads and are portrayed in our stories as battles between the Devas and the Asuras. Even if there is a person who seems to embody the qualities of an Asura, it is not because he is bad, but because his thinking is wrong. All conflicts first happen within and then express themselves in the external world. Every war is first waged in the mind. If it cannot be resolved there, it expresses itself externally. With proper inquiry, these conflicts get resolved as they arise. We're not trying to avoid their occurrence, that is natural, but we resolve them within so that they do not find an external expression. If that resolving capacity is not there, or the people around do not help the resolution, but inflame the conflict, a war erupts. The Mahabharata war could not be avoided only because of this Asura Sampat. It is very pertinent for Lord Krishna to talk about Asura Sampat here because it has brought the war that Arjuna is facing. All the problems are because of Duryodhana's thinking, which is here called Asura Sampat. Here we must understand that there is no person who has only these qualities. Everyone has some measure of Daivi Sampat too. The Asura Sampat is being detailed here only to understand what it is.
Okay, Asura Sampat means demonic or unrighteous dispositions. So here Krishna is introducing these Asura Sampat, and they are the ones that color our samskaras in a form of security and entertainment. Security, entertainment, security, entertainment. How else can I get security? How else can I get entertainment? So these Asura Sampat will be predisposed towards this carnal drive for these two primary needs in life. And then the verse talks about a few introductory verses or traits to just get us going, to see what this is about. And the first is Dambhaha. So these are the Asura traits now, the demonic unrighteous traits. And by the way, before I begin, there is a tendency of the mind when we are talking about this, because we will go into some impure thoughts, impure thinking. And the mind loves to feel safe. It loves to protect itself. And the way it does that is it projects this onto someone else. So I'm going to keep reminding you throughout, stop, bring this onto you. Where could you be applying this? The transformation happens how? By always bringing it back onto yourself. This is pretension. This is showing off one's abilities to the world. For example, doing noble actions, not for the sake of noble actions, but for the sake of appearing like a good person. In other words, a self-promotion agenda. Everyone turn your heads over. I'm putting the money in. Okay, I feel good. I'm a good person. Exaggerate, it doesn't matter. This is the kind of dambhaha, pretension showing off. Desire to exhibit one's position, status, or wealth. And also one point about dambhaha is, see, sometimes the mind also has this extreme, it goes left or the right. Sometimes you have to state your position, because suppose I'm talking to, suppose Allison, right? And Allison doesn't tell me anything about her. What errors will you and I naturally make? We will assume that Allison doesn't know. But then suppose we ask Allison, hey, Allison, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background? And Allison says, I am a neurophysicist, or, I am a scientist and I work at, NASA, I'm a rocket scientist or engineer, something that is credible. It doesn't matter what it is. And now I immediately, you and I can adjust our language to match Allison's intellect. So again, we need to clearly and assertively state our position. And this is what's called that, hey, I won't tell you about me because, I don't want to be treated lesser than I am. And then you stop from there. That's all you need to do. Okay, the next one is darpaha. Darpaha, this is arrogance. What is arrogance? It's whereby the focus is on an individual. It's on yourself. It's not on the present moment. I'm not really caring where you stand. I'm making this about myself. Discounting others' sovereignty, their rights, which means that my rights are more important than yours. Therefore, it's more important for me to be heard rather than to hear you. Even in spirituality, we have Dvaita. You're a Dvaitist. You're a Dvaitin. You're an ISKCON, you're an Advaitin, you're a Shishtadvaitin, you're a Buddhist, or you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're a Hindu, all boxes. So Vedanta is about removing these boxes, because the boxes are what compartmentalizes reality, so I'm not in touch with it. And then we have abhimanaha. So as I said, in love with one's own possessions, one's own achievements. It can be a little bit subtler, it doesn't have to be big things. Like I'm entitled, I deserve special treatment. This is all narcissistic behavior, this sense of entitlement. And this sometimes can trace back to childhood, whereby the kids were spoiled and they always gotten everything that mommy and daddy, whatever they asked, mommy and daddy gave them. And I know some people like this, it's hard to work with them. Krodhaha, anger, parushyam, impoliteness and rudeness, and ajnanam, and this is unable to discern dharma from adharma. Since this is chapter 16, we're talking from righteous and unrighteous, not necessarily self and not self. So next verse, we'll talk about the destiny of a Daiva and Asura. What is their path laid out? What is their life going to look like? The one who overindulges in security and entertainment.
Nobody wants to be free from something that is desirable. Freedom implies bondage. What is this bondage? It can be physical. It can also be emotional. There are things that I cannot leave. Even though I think that I have them, in fact, they have me. In the beginning, perhaps I held them, but in time, they begin to hold me. In a prison, though you are physically bound, you need not feel bound. The entire physical world, including your own physical body, mind, and senses, should not be able to bind you. The freedom you are asking is from the original bondage, the notion I am bound, expressing as I am wanting, I am limited, I am mortal, I am other than Ishvara. The moment you see yourself as different from anything, there is fear and a sense of bondage. The one who sees no division is free, not only from fear, but from everything. The moksha you are seeking here is not any relative moksha within samsara that will only last for some time, but moksha from samsara. This Devi Sampat is the basis for jnana, that is moksha. The Asura Sampat, on the other hand, is meant for bondage. It does not create bondage, because the notion of bondage already exists, but with these characteristics of Asura Sampat, the bondage is perpetuated. To get released from samsara, we require Devi Sampat, but to remain in it, we require Asura Sampat. If we analyze ourselves, we all find that we have some Devi Sampat and some Asura Sampat. Arjuna is no exception. Krishna does not want him to entertain any doubt about his qualifications, and so he tells him, "You are born to Devi Sampat." And in addressing him as Pandava, he reminds him that he is the son of Pandu, a great man, and hence has all the virtues of a Deva, which equip him for moksha. Now Krishna is going to continue to talk about Asura Sampat. The portions that are coming are very relevant to modern thinking, especially the whole corporate mentality and market psychology. The corporate mentality is expressed as, today I got this, tomorrow I will get that. And the psychology of the market is how to convince someone to part with his money. All that is being discussed.
So let's just get some structure. So Devi Sampat leads to one goal only, one infinite goal, moksha. Asura Sampat leads to infinite limited goals. The contrast, one limitless goal versus infinite limited goals in the samsara tree. So it feels like, right, we're getting more on the other side, you know, one more, or one limitless goal. Now, obviously, the one limitless goal takes a lot longer. It's not as fun, by the way. It's not as entertaining. It's not as kind of social, and sometimes you're not, you know, so much part of the world. But it is one limitless goal, right? So you have to make a choice. Hopefully we already made that choice, right, in the class. And then Krishna also says that, Arjuna, you who are now listening to this, considering you are listening to this, already entails either you are born with Daiva Sampat or you have developed these Daiva Sampat enough to be listening and be interested and discern Daiva from Asura Sampat, or at least have the capacity of intelligently discriminating and following the path of one limitless goal, Daiva Sampat, at least the ones that lead to the one limitless goal. Now, there's also a more complication that goes here. You can also be born with an Asura Sampat, and we always even talk about Rakshasa. Rakshasa is more tomasic, more I want to hurt you, I enjoy hurting you. Asura is, I don't mind hurting you to get what I want, but, you know, I'll do whatever is necessary to get what I want. But Tama, the Rakshasa, we will also get into that, is I'm going to hurt you. I enjoy hurting you. And we will talk about this too. You can be born with Asura and Rakshasa, that means Rajasic and Tamasic qualities, but then through hard effort, you have developed Daiva Sampat. Right? You have developed through hard work. Or you could be born with Daiva Sampat, with these divine virtues. And what happens? we get proud, we get arrogant, and then we start to slowly get corrupted, our minds. And we have seen both of these cases. Sometimes even happens to teachers, right? You know, all that power, all of them was, you know, bowing, worshiping your feet. You have so much power. And now, oh, I can do whatever I want. The person started off as Daiva Sampat and slowly got corrupted into Asura Sampat. So it doesn't mean just because one is born privileged with Daiva that they are the one who are, you know, so-called destined to attain moksha. Even the one who has born in a slum can get out of that position in one single lifetime, follow these Daiva Sampat and attain moksha. Okay, and then in the next verse, we will talk about the two major paths. So again, this is a repetition, verse 6. So Krishna in verse 6 is going to divide the entire human race. Did I say the entire human race? Yes, the entire human race into two categories. And these two categories were true since time began. I know that's a little bit of a confusion there. Since time began, these two qualities were there. Two major paths that we all follow. And we can also see this in accordance with when we are born. Some children are born with a predisposition towards Asura Sampat, and some are born towards Daiva Sampat. So the first one is Asura, and as I said, this is Artha and Kama. This is all one's attention and a sense of living. Purpose of living is security, money, a sense of wealth and status, and just being seen by the world, like being loud, like out there. Just want to be out there. And then we got Daiva, same thing. Artha Kama is also there. However, they are seen as what? A means to moksha. In other words, for a Daiva Asura Sampat, for one with divine virtues, they use wealth and security for the mere attainment of moksha, of that one limitless goal. Okay, how so? Give us an example. You need a house, right? You need a quiet place to study. You need a quiet place to meditate. You need a quiet place to think. You need nature, maybe not, but whatever is important to you, to contemplate and think about these important teachings, right? You need that security, that money flowing in. Otherwise, we start to worry, and then we're not thinking about this, and then more effort goes into, finding a job, and then we slowly move away from this dharma and moksha. Isn't it true that we're used to getting the rewards right now? This is how the general disposition of the world is. I want my reward now. If I don't see it, I'm not interested. And so this is how the Asura Sampat makes their decisions. Wherever there's instant gratification, I'll go for that. If it's delayed gratification, no thanks. Now imagine giving someone who is not yet qualified, and you say, let's talk about moksha. Let's talk about, a different reality, a reality much vaster than this. No thanks. What's required for that? Well, years of contemplation, scriptures, reading, meditating, living a certain lifestyle. No thanks. So we can see why Daiva Sampat is so unpopular. Pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidura suraha na shaucham na pichacharaha. Asatyam te shuvidyate, asatyam apratishtamte, jagad ahuraneshwaram, aparaspara kim anyat kama haitukam, etam drishtim avashtabhya, nashtatma nolpa buddhayaha, prabhavantyugra karmanaha, kshayaya jagato hitaha.
People who have qualities belonging to the asuras do not know what is to be done and what is to be withdrawn from. There is neither inner cleanliness nor proper conduct, nor truthfulness in them. They say this world of people is untruthful, without ethical basis, godless, and is born of the union of male and female, is driven by passion and nothing else. Having recourse to this view, these enemies of the world, whose minds are destroyed, who are of meager thinking and cruel actions, are there very much for the destruction of the world.
So let's embark on verse 7 to 21, details of Asura Sampat, traits oriented towards unrighteousness, inconsideration. Let me give you an intro first. So Asura Sampat, again, what does this mean? Demonic traits. Two types of demonic traits. First one is Asuras. Asuras generally use their wealth, power, status, position for amplifying oneself in this world. And Rakshasa, this is category number 2, Rakshasas use their power, wealth, status, position to strategically harm in this world. Have you seen fake reviews? You know, fake reviews? What is this? Hurting, harming the competitors. One business owner wants more business. What will I do? I will harm you so that I can get more. Dave?
I was reading somewhere about Facebook. Apparently what they do is they play on this mind thinking where positive news is being ignored and negative news is amplified. So in the algorithm or the program, what they get more money if more people click on the negative news, and so that's how Facebook works. So it's quite interesting, actually.
You know, you're walking. Let's go back in earlier times without internet, and you know those newsstands in the middle of a busy road, and then you turn your head towards the newspaper, and it says, "Today, beautiful sunshine, no rain." Are you going to buy that newspaper? Versus today, catastrophic C5 tornado heading for our way. 5 tips to save your possessions. How to handle your stress in the upcoming terrible dark times. Okay, I want to buy that. Okay, money. Fake reviews, defaming others behind their backs. It's so easy to defame others online nowadays. You know, anonymous signature, anonymous sign up, not even revealing one's username. Just start talking trash about those that I don't like. In the spiritual world, it happens as anywhere else. No difference. Political parties, we've seen this during the presidential election in the USA. You know, one side, Republicans, Democrats, okay, hurting each other.
I was just going to say, it sounds quite dualistic, like heaven and hell or something, but like, you know, like you said, a kid at school that might be quite angry or want to hurt people might be because they've come from a traumatic upbringing rather than that they're inherently, are these, how much is it saying that these are just ways that people manifest rather than kind of objectifying it as some kind of good and evil that people have?
Naturally clean mind, when it's distorted by its own personal notions, that leads into what we call unrighteous Asura Sampat, demonic qualities. A mind that starts to come back with that reality, starts to express this nature of oneself, which is compassion, love, empathy, accommodation, embracing, and listening. Now, when it goes back to your first topic, in terms of someone having an upbringing, let's say they are brought up like this, it's not the only thing, right? It's just one contributing factor, because if you take life as a long extension of many lifetimes, then it's a continuity. Some get passed over, and therefore the person starts to exercise that. But then also parents start to affect that, and schools start to add on their own little attributes. You know, you got kids in the corner smoking weed, and then the kid naturally wants to try some out. He gets in a bad company, and then he starts to overlap his Daiva-born traits with those kids, and therefore he goes from Daiva Sampat into Asura Sampat. So it's not really a dualistic, it's just trying to say how mind sucks up qualities by those that we get exposed to, you know, by those ideas that we get marketed. It's like a sponge, you know, expose your mind to a certain quality of thinking, and that's how I will start to think.
I think karma comes into it a lot then. Karma, previous karma. Understanding about previous karma makes a lot more sense with, you know, being born in this body with certain tendencies, as opposed to someone else having different tendencies. I think in Western culture, we tend to not even realize that, or we dismiss any kind of karma, previous karma, I think that's where it sort of breaks down in Western society, because they sort of took that out of religion, didn't they? Any kind of reincarnation or the idea of having Sanchita karma, you know, that having that previous karma is not involved in the religions here in the West. So it makes it hard for people to understand any type of tendencies, samskaras and vasanas and stuff like that.
And maybe there's a compensation system for that called psychology. You know, that's a big thing in Western world, you know, to kind of look at your childhood, but it's not just the childhood. There's so much more to it. Okay, Becky, is there anything else on your mind regarding this?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to, we're not blaming the individual with it, are we? I mean, we're saying that as individuals, we have our own kind of tendencies, but there's also tendencies of society more broadly that could impact the way people behave and how we might scapegoat certain people in society.
Indeed. So exactly. So you're right. So we're not blaming anyone. We're just saying how a person innocently finds himself going through the world, accumulating different ideas and concepts. Now, we're all busy. We don't, you know, go in later and check out, let me see if I believe, is it in line with the truth? Is it in line with the reality? We don't do that. We're too busy. And therefore, the person assumes that this is right, and therefore they start to act accordingly. So we now have to bring in the scriptures, the user's manual for the brain, for this vehicle, and thus we start to live in line with as it was originally intended. So again, Asura, Rakshasa, these traits have a not so much value for kindness and empathy. You know, they see someone that's kind and empathy and smiles and gentle and considers others' needs and includes others, right? And what is this all considered? Weakness of character. You're weak. You're a weak person. Example, you've probably seen teenagers, even saw during the COVID times, you know, teenagers even record themselves of burning down a business, and they put this up on TikTok. Proud, hey, look, we're burning down this shop, you know, it deserves to burn down. Or bullies recording each other, and they put it up on Facebook for what? For 2 million views. No remorse, no sense of inclusion of the other's pain and the consequences, totally erased. This is what's called a brain or a mind that is suppressed by its own program, overriding the original program. I remember once during the former election, you probably saw this, where Mr. Trump and Joe Biden were having a debate, and the other one was talking over. Remember that? They just couldn't agree. So they had to bring in a mediator, the one that stands in between and cuts off the microphone for one, and so that the other can talk. Now think about this. The individual is unable to control his own mind. It just goes. And therefore, an external help was needed to correct that error. Okay. And then even further, now we have what's called, what do you start? Truth Social. You probably heard of that. Truth Social, a private social network called Truth Social. And instead of calling them posts, they're called truth. What do they call it? Truth posts. So whatever the person puts up, it's called, it's a truth. In other words, even devalues the name of truth, totally oblivious of what truth means. You can see how the brain operates. It turns truth into its own personal version. Alison.
And so this is, from my understanding, the tomasic force working through the psychology and nature. And just personally, when you see, you know, some things that would be pretty upsetting for me, the way that I see it is not to, anyway, I just think, oh, you know, they're really projecting very bad or a lot of tamas. It kind of encapsulates everything. It doesn't excuse it, but it's that ignorant, dark, terrifying force. Yeah. But it also helps to depersonalize it in a way, and I find it less upsetting in a way, because I feel that through the explanation of Vedanta, that's how it's explained to me. It's not personal, like it. I mean, it obviously has repercussions because everything has cause and effect. But it just helps me, and I'm really grateful for that understanding, actually.
The book, I just read a book called Sadacharaha, And it said one short line, and it encapsulated everything Alison just said. It is a play between ignorance and knowledge. So this tama, guna, as Alison was talking about, this dark force, we don't even have to use these words, just ignorance. I do not know what needs to be done. And therefore, I have no choice but to innocently act out my ignorance. So this is a play between knowledge and ignorance. The more knowledge one gains, the more their ignorance goes away, the more their unnatural behaviors start to correct themselves. Right? Eliminating competitors. This is another example of Asura Rakshasa trait, eliminating competitors. Did you know that the word compete is from the Latin competere? It means to strive or contend for together. Now, how did that together turn into against? Something happened, competere, to strive or to contend for together. And yet today, the word competition is about eliminating the other, or just not even eliminate, but just kind of upping, being one up, being one higher. Suppose I go to a new country, or you go to a new country, and we ask for the ticket price. We don't know the local prices for the taxi or the tickets or the movies. And someone in that moment, what do they say? It's 5 times higher than it should be. What is this? Right? This is that Asura trait. Instead of being honest, saying how it is, I take advantage of your ignorance. And sometimes this is impossible to return these individuals. You know, if too much of these qualities are there. Ravana, his brother, his wife, grandfather, all warned him, including Rama's Hanuman and Angada. They all came to Ravana and said, hey, let Sita go, please. You are burying your own coffin. Not burying your own coffin. You're burying your own grave. You're building your own coffin and you're burying yourself into the ground. No thanks. I'm going to do as I wish. So he said, no, no, no. In other words, the Lord came to him. He didn't listen. And what happened? He was buried in the ground. Duryodhana final moments. What did he say to Ashwatthama? Hey, produce a child, Duryodhana's final moments, that is going to be powerful enough to destroy the Pandavas, you know, the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And you contrast that with the last words of Jesus. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. You see the contrast between the Daiva Sampat and the Asura Sampat. The big question is, at the beginning I said these traits, these two categories that Krishna defines are beginningless. Now, that's going to introduce a question. How do you explain that, right? How did Asura Sampat, how did immorality come? What happened? The problem with that question is there was no one point when it was all dharmic. It was always dharma, adharma playing out simultaneously. So let me give you a little storyline or a little logic to understand the world a little bit better in terms of what makes people do things that are unspeakable or just unfair or hurtful to others. Okay, so dharma and moksha, these are the qualities of righteousness and liberation. Is this known by birth? Dharma and moksha. Do you get born and first thing parents tell you, let me educate you about dharma and moksha? No. Why? Because they are imperceptible. And we are born how? We are born with the 5 senses. So this means no one can see punya papa. No one can see those unseen things that are yet to arise because of my actions. That's punya papa, right? Nor can anyone see a liberated person. How do you see a liberated person? A halo in their head, around their head, right? A little special dot, smoke coming around them. This is because of Gayatri's smoke. I can say that. Huh? You know, they say, you know, one day Jesus is going to come from the clouds. Okay, suppose he does come. How will you identify him? Is he going to wear white robes, right? What is he going to look like? Ordinary person. So dharma, moksha cannot be seen, cannot be perceived by the 5 senses. So for this reason, for this only reason, that means that the person can only know about what? Artha and kama. security, and wealth. Why is this? Because as the baby starts to grow up, what is the baby? What is a toddler, baby, toddler, child? What do they see around them? Everyone is pursuing what? Security. They're building a house. They're making money. They're being successful. They're getting a position, right? They're making deals. They're on TV. This is exactly what I want to do. And others, that's the entrepreneurs. And then the other types are, getting pleasure, a nice family, nothing wrong with that. Children, okay, fine, I want that. Roller coasters, I want a little bit of that. Travel packages, I want that. This is all that a person can perceive. Artha, kama, security and entertainment. Not only that, but animals also reinforce that. All animals want security for themselves and they want entertainment. You see a dog playing. And so you naturally assume, aha, this is the only purpose of life, security and entertainment. Artha, kama. Therefore, the entire life is sculpted on the grounds of these two purposes. So my whole life, every thought becomes about building artha and kama. Now, what the scriptures say is artha and kama is okay up to a certain point. At one point, the person now having a process, a capability of independent thinking, their duty, owing to your independent thinking, is to start thinking higher. It is your duty to do that, to start seeking, right? Because now the buddhi can discern what is the limitation of these entertainments and securities that I've been attaining for my entire life. Let me look into the nature of this. How will more of this make a difference? When is the trigger for stopping? How many more zeros do I want in my bank account? That is the job of the buddhi, to start asking eventually. But a user's manual for something more complex like the brain, you definitely need one. And that is called the scriptures. So the scriptures tell us when is enough to stop drinking the artha kama juice. When do we start drinking the dharma and moksha? That's what the scriptures tell you. Because the adult doesn't know more or less than a child. The adult just carries over the artha kama from their childhood. So technically, it's still a child inside an adult body because it's still following the former two. Rise before sunset. Start your day with something spiritual that's going to set the frame for the entire day. You notice from your own experience, the first thing that you grab or see that your mind gets exposed to in the morning literally sets up the frame for the entire day. So they say, start chanting, do a japa, do a meditation, or read some spiritual content, because that is going to keep your mind from the temptation of artha and kama, which it has accustomed itself to since the beginning. Now, this transition that we talk about from artha and kama into dharma and moksha, this is what's called the second birth of an individual, called the manushya. So the moment a person recognizes this, that is what we call the initiation into manhood, womanhood. Now, I'm not talking about the Western version, manhood, womanhood, being grown up and looking pretty and all this. This is not it. This is still, like a grown body, still a child inside. Manushya is what? I saw the limitations of artha kama, and now I see dharma and moksha are the only worthy of pursuits. This is the official birth of a human being while alive. This is your second birth. So suppose we don't follow this. We ignore all of this advice. The question is, what's the fate of one who discards the guidance of the scriptures as I just talked about? These asura people do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Pravartim, what is to be done, nivartim, what is to be stopped. Why can they not tell what is to be done and not done? Because one's own likes and dislikes have overshadowed the reality. Someone is in pain. I don't see pain. I see, how can I, help you so you can help me in the future? Right? Overshadowed the reality. Therefore, unable to tell what is to be done and what is not to be done. Anytime there's a confusion pertaining to any situation, at any moment in one's life, as one says, I don't know what to do, pause, backtrack. What's happening in that moment is you have past voices overriding, overshadowing your mind. And therefore you're saying, I don't know what is to be done. If the mind remains clear and calm, and this is why we need to give it some space. If it finds itself in that moment of pain, then we need to give it some space, because the mind is presently overshadowed by that pain, by that grief. Therefore, we take a little break, time out, so that we can have that voice of truth, a voice of guidance. So these Asuric traits, once they come, once they cloud, what are these Asuric traits? I want to bring back to Becky's question. They're simply my personal likes and dislikes. What would I prefer? What would I expect to happen right now? Na shaucham na apicha acharaha na satyam teshu vidyate. So they have neither purity nor religious disposition nor truthfulness for this very reason. Right? They don't follow the tradition. They don't follow the ways. It's called the rebellion. I want to be different. I want to my own way, because that is considered stronger than following the quote the society. Okay, what else do they do? Verse 8, asatyam apratishtam te jagat ahuhu anishwaram. A mind that is under the spell of Asuric traits. This mind is without truth. It does not honor such thing as honesty. It is without morality, without God. It does not believe in God. It does not believe in morality. It does not believe nor honor being honest. In fact, it considers lying is the only way to succeed in this world. And we all know once we make one lie, we are compelled to continue that thread, because we don't want to be called a liar. If we change our story, we're compelled to continue lying. Once one lie is made, then the thread of lying has to continue, because I don't want to compromise my status. And for this reason, because I do not believe in morality, nor God, nor being honest, what happens then? They start to project that. The mind starts to project that onto others. And therefore, I call others impure, others suspicious, lying. I don't believe you. I don't trust you. The world is always a projection of one's own inner image. That means one projects one's own perception onto the world, and therefore we opinionate the world according to our own inner projections. Nastika is utterly non-believer in God because they exclusively rely on perception. 5 sense. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. Punya Papa, I don't see it, doesn't exist. God, can't see it. Where? Show me. Where is he? Doesn't exist. Dharma, where's Dharma? Where's righteousness? Show me. Doesn't exist. Right? It's like putting water, for example, on a tree. And all you can see through your 5 senses is the water gets sucked up. But do we see how that water enters the individual branches and the leaves and gives life to that tree? We don't see that. So it's like that. Because I don't see where this water goes, all I see is it comes at the root level, and that's where my reality stops. This is what we call such thinker as shallow, unable to see the depth further than the obvious. Can you scientifically prove dharma? Can't do it, because it requires perception. And for that reason, it doesn't exist. Next, more artha, more kama, because that I can prove with more numbers in my bank account. Punya papam, show me past life. Sanchita karma, as Lorena was talking about, the collection that sculpts the baby, makes the person be born in a certain family. Makes that person be born in a certain family that is also a product of what's sanchita assigned and what we call prarabdha karma. But I don't see that, therefore I don't believe it. So no moral order, right? Don't believe in the moral order. And yet it is the very moral order that sustains us human beings. Imagine if there was no moral order in this world. You would be, and I would be afraid to leave our house because we don't know if someone's going to shoot us. Just because they don't like us. I don't like your face, you remind me of someone, bang, done. No remorse, no guilt, nothing, just continues like that. The very moral order is what makes you and I comfortably go to a shop on the road, not afraid that someone's going to swirl their car intentionally and kill us. So we have no choice but to trust, because it is already built in. Dharma is built in. That's why we all comply to the rules at one level or the other. I know if you go to different countries, it looks like there's no rules, but there is still that subtle reading of the individuals on the road. They still have that subtle respect for each other. Furthermore, how did the world come? This is what an Asuric mind thinks, under the spell of its own projections. Aparaspara sambhutam kim anyat kama haitukam. People, how are they born? They're born of parents. Full stop. You see how shallow that is? It's all genetics, because that's what I can perceive, but I cannot perceive a product of many causes that made you the person that you are today. And as for the world, how did the world come? It came out of matter. When matter comes, the world is there. When matter comes, consciousness is there. Simple, move on. As for man and woman, what is their relationship? Passion. The world is driven by passion. And therefore, passion is the right means of approach in this world. Passion is good. Look at the shows. What shows are hot nowadays? You know what? Salsa dancing, you know, all sorts of dancing, and, you know, man, woman, you know, that sexy pose, all of that. Hot stuff.
Love Island.
Right? A lot of views, very popular. Again, I'm not saying anything's right or wrong with this. I'm just showing you, we're just being shown how the world at large operates. So the next verse, which we still have time, will talk about their indiscriminate nature, which is between virtue and sin. So they cannot discriminate between virtue and sin. And because of this, what happens? They cause harm to the world. Etam drishtima bashtabhya nashtadmanolpa buddhayaha prabhavantyugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha.
Having recourse to this view, these enemies of the world whose minds are destroyed, who are of meager thinking and cruel actions, are there very much for the destruction of the world.
Since, according to the last verse, since they do not believe in dharma, punya, papa, or moksha, because they cannot perceive it, because they only rely on perception. Nashta atmanaha, they are, quote, lost spiritually. In other words, disconnected from divinity. No such thing. Okay, so they're missing the knowledge that brings lasting contentment. And I'll give you a little metaphor of this. Imagine a blind person, a person born blind, and they want to tell, and you tell them about colors. You tell them about the world of colors and form, and they want to then disprove or prove either the existence or the non-existence of such a report coming from the one who has eyes, who's directly seeing the reality of color and form, tries to tell to a blind person. And then the blind person uses the 4 healthy remaining senses, very healthy. Can he or she ever prove or disprove the existence of color and form? No matter how hard they try, they will utterly fail. In other words, scriptures are like this. Scriptures are as though a 6th sense. They show us a reality that our 5 senses cannot prove or disprove, no matter how hard we try. Therefore, if I reject, for example, punya papam, past life, continuity, prarabdha, sanchita, if I reject moksha, if I reject dharma, who's the loser? Only I am the loser. Not the Vedas, nor the one who is expounding such a truth. Nor Ishvara, the creator, the author of those Vedas. Just like a scientific instrument, there is to do what? It's there to prove and therefore show you certain health protocols that you can take. It says here, take this food, and you say, I don't see it, I don't believe it. Who's the loser? I am the loser. Science has already undergone rigorous, extensive study analysis using their scientific methods to discern the truth. And this is where that level of faith comes in. Because now suppose the mind says, yeah, but I don't believe it. How do you prove that the scriptures are the sixth sense? You see the problem? You see the error? Therefore, that person loses out because I can't. That's the point. Because whatever I do, I'm going to use my five senses to explain that. So this is where that level of understanding that faith comes in the scriptures. Becky.
So is it all right if I ask another question? Is that all right? So, okay, ultimately though, this is all Ishvara, isn't it? So say, for example, we're all here and there might be somebody here that refuses to see this, you know, they're a materialist or they don't want to believe in past lives or whatever. Ultimately, the illusion of that jiva is created within Ishvara, isn't it? It's not. So why is it, for example, that like we're all here now and there's different distribution of these, whatever you want to call it, because ultimately it's all just part of the same thing anyway.
Yeah, so I'll just give a little analogy. So suppose there's two waves. One wave understands the truth of itself is the water. Therefore, wherever it looks, it sees other waves as the water too. In other words, I am the water, but so is the wave across me. My neighbor is also the water. The moment you take that knowledge out, Becky, what happens? Then I start to see the wave as something different from myself. I start to see the entire ocean called Ishvara as different from myself. Therefore, what happens then? Anxiety starts to get created. I need to attain another wave. I need to have another wave for whose happiness? My happiness. So therefore, the moment we bring this knowledge in, that we are not part in terms of that content that pervades both the whole and the individual, the ocean and the individual, then one is free from that moment on. So yes, it is, every wave is within the context of the ocean, right? Every jiva is within Ishvara. However, that jiva who doesn't know that, for them, life becomes about artha and kama because they cannot perceive other than the obvious.
But why does Ishvara manifest like good and evil differently in different jivas around the thing?
Okay, good. So Ishvara does not manifest evil. It is that when knowledge is covered by ignorance, that means I have to remove that ignorance, then that divinity gets expressed how? Distorted. Therefore, I make an error. Until I move that ignorance, the errors will keep being made. So it's not like Ishvara intention. It's not like Ishvara created evil. There's no such thing as evil. There's only light. In fact, how do you discern the difference between light and darkness? Darkness is still just absence of light. So there's only light. There's only dharma. If I take away the knowledge of that dharma, then what happens? I start to make errors. And that error is not Ishvara, that error is whose? The one who is still covered by ignorance. Therefore, we are educating our minds so we no longer make that error. So again, now, if you want to talk about other jivas, we can't help because they're not listening to this. So we can only talk about our own minds because we are listening to this. And that's the whole point. Remove the further errors that we may be carrying, which are expressed how? As, quote, evil, which is not Ishvara's, it's the individuals owing to their false distortions of the dharmic principle, which is what sustains the harmony of the entire universe right now. Okay, in other words, even faith, blind faith at some level or the other can be better than no faith at all, because at the beginning, the mind may not be sensitive enough to pick it up, but through the course of time, it will. Just like, for example, a mother says to her child, clean up after yourself, clean your mouth, close your mouth while you eat. Now, the child may not understand why. Why should I clean after myself? Why should I close my mouth? But that's all going to help when? Much later on. So in other words, even if one doesn't understand the scriptures right now, still engage them, because when the mind clears itself up, it will understand that. If good people are, subject to pain, then what's the point of following Dharma? Even if Dharma exists and good people go through pain, unfortunate or unpleasant chapters in their life, what's the point of following being a good person? Challenge. That is like saying this. So how do you counter this? That is like saying this. Okay, so suppose someone says that by following in the medical industry, following certain medical protocols, if you follow it, you will generally attain or sustain a good health in your system. You will have generally good health. Now, even if that is true, you will always find people who, even if they follow that, they still get sick, right? Now, suppose I say to you, I see, he got sick, she got sick, and they've been following your advice. Therefore, everything you've told me is wrong. Is this a fair argument? No, there's always exceptions. Nothing is 100% because the person has a different response to a particular a medical recommendation. In other words, we cannot say just because a good person doesn't receive good, that there's no such thing as punya papa. You know, we cannot say that following dharma is useless because it still brings you misfortune. You can't say that, because they may be true for some people, but it's not true for everyone if you look at it on a general mass scale. Since they fail to prove the validity of the Vedas, they think God, dharma, punya papa, past life, future life, all of that is non-existent. And yet, what is the problem? It is their own foolishness. And what is the foolishness? That you cannot prove or disprove the Vedas through your 5 perceptions. And yet the individual is trying to do that. So this means no matter how much you argue, whatever logic one brings forth to prove or disprove the Vedas, utterly pointless, because they are the 6th sense.
The Asuric persons in India, we are having multiple religions and multiple culture and rich and poor persons, and rich persons who are wealthy are leading the Asuric, they are having the Asuric virtues, and the good persons who are suffering with poverty or something, they are having the Devika Sampat or something like that. Why there is a difference between this? Why there is a lifestyle between this? Those Asuric virtues, they are giving a very good life. Those who are having the godly virtues, they are living a very suffering life. So when I am trying to establish that God is there, they are simply asking these questions, why there is a disparity between these two persons? And how can we say that God is there? If God is there, then why he is suffering?
Yeah, but see, not all people some people started from a very low position and they built themselves up slowly, and they're now contributing and offering jobs to other people like you and I. How can we call that Asuric? That is giving, right? So we cannot call people in the upper position Asuras or even Daivas or Rakshasas. It's a mixture, as the book just said. It's always a mixture. And we can also find the Rakshasas and Asuras in the lower class, or the upper class, or in between. So there's no particular category that we can define or dictate anyone into. Okay, so the answer to that is, it's got no answer, because I cannot categorize people and put them into boxes. I can't say that wealthy people are. I look at the Bill Foundation, the Bill Gates Foundation. How many malaria? He's doing his life work all the way from Microsoft into those kids in Africa who are unguided and misprivileged.
This made me think, Andre, like when I went to Bali, some of the happiest people I've ever seen were in Bali, and they're so polite and so grateful and just, in the moment, they're just so happy, always smiling. And I think, well, they've probably got less stuff, but they're just happier. So they maybe we can't look at that scale of how much is enough depending on your material stuff. Because some people have much less, but they seem much happier or much more content, So how can you gauge that really? Yeah. I look at all the people that have got lots of stuff and they're miserable, Yeah.
My friend went to Fiji. He said some of the happiest people he's seen is so simple huts. Of course, the weather helps with that, that also helps. But huts and simple family life, you got your village, no technology, and some of the happiest people there. So this is also the collective, the collective karma, the age that everyone goes through has to simply adapt to that age. So sometimes there's no point complaining. So the point is to adapt to the environment. You know, because what happens sometimes we try to drag the past and we say the good old times. But guess what? In those times, we also said the good old times. So in other words, we have to look at the moments and make the best of it right now in the city that you live in, with the nation, with the culture that you live in.
Rather than comparing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Bali and then I questioned myself, is that because I'm on holiday when everything's
Yeah, sometimes the wealthy, we look at them as wealthy and enjoying life. They actually could be suffering too, that they don't really reflect that on others. They don't show it out, they don't expose that. But the poor are suffering because we can see that they're suffering, like the evidence that they're suffering because we think they're suffering. That also could be a wrong conception of ours.
Yeah.
Like what Lorena said, the poor could be very contented, but we think they're suffering because they haven't got the material part of the world. And I think suffering is good in one way because it makes us closer to God. We're seeking his help then. We're not seeking, we cry for help, really. We desperately cry for help when we're suffering. Otherwise, we enjoy life and we take it as its own content. Yeah.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.